same. So similarly, another path. So if it is footwear, and which component to come? So footwear component should come. Okay. Another path. So this is fashion, and which component to come? Component and fashion component to come. That is the path we have configured. Initially, the routes are configured for your application. These routes will be loaded into your application. So you see here at the top here. So here I am just requesting slash electronics. Electronics. I am requesting slash electronics and hit enter. And you can see here, so that electronics is not coming. I am requesting some fashion, and that fashion is not coming because still the configuration is not set. Where to render that information, how to render that information, all this we need to define. That means whenever anything you are requesting, currently which page is in the startup? Currently shopping home is in the startup. In shopping home, that is your startup page. In startup component, in shopping home, we need to display all others, fashion and everything we need to display. That means where you want the components result should be rendered. So that means where the components result should be rendered. That means when a path is is requested, requested from URL, the resulting component is rendered into into startup component. So at a specific location, which is defined by using the directive, which is defined by using the directive. We have a directive that is router outlet. So router outlet tells where to render that requested component. Router outlet is responsible for specifying where to render that particular resulting component. So that means currently our startup component is shopping home. In shopping home, I want all others, electronics, fashion, and everything. Then let's go to the shopping home HTML. Shopping home HTML. So that is the startup component for us. In the shopping home HTML, here I'm just adding here an router outlet. So temporarily I keep a div and a class as a container fluid. Okay. And here I kept a heading shopping home. So that shopping home is coming now. So that is no problem here. Shopping home, it is coming here. That is the shopping home. Okay. Now, whatever you are requesting, it should be rendered below here. Then we have to create a router outlet here. Router outlet will render your routing result. That means you can see now. So I am typing here. Suppose still it is not completed. I am typing here electronics. That means our intention is to display that electronics here. I am writing here fashion. That means I need to display that fashion here. But important is that requests need to be configured and rendered there. Generally what happens is if you want that request to be rendered here, so how the request is expected now? That means usually we need the request to be configured. So from the links, so that user clicks on the link, that link related result will come and it will render. So that we need to configure by using this links. We need to configure that by using links. So you can use router outlet to tell where, but when to come that. So that means on a link click, it has to access. So it on a link click, it has to access. That's all we have to configure and define. Generally, I'm using here shopping home component, but actually you observe carefully. So by default, you have app router module here, app component.html. This is actually present with our project in the initial. That means in the beginning itself it contains, and observe carefully. This is designed with all the UI actually. And in this UI, you can see here all this is configured. And where to render the information requested from various options, that is actually configured. Here you can see all the path specifications are there, that is related to SVG here. And one link will be there. Router outlet. So this is that router outlet is inside this index page, because this component is accessed in the index page. Let's go to the index page. Yeah. So here you can see that in this index page, the result is displayed here. That means this is our custom component. So this is our custom component. Custom component means our own component we are configuring here. I will show you here one point. Suppose here I am using app root. That means this is going to access. It is going to access the root component. You observe here. It is going to access the root component. Root component is having a one more. I need to put it in the startup also, right? In app module. In the app module, here we have to write here app component. App component. That is in the startup. App component is in the startup. Now you can see that app component is in the startup. Then it will get the startup component details here. So that means by default, you can see this is all here. This is the default app component which is in our startup, Now what we want here is we want to start with the shopping home here. We want to start with the shopping home here, and we need to render and display the contents here. Right? That means in this route module, you have home, and which is going to access the shopping home. And we have electronics, footwear, everything should come into this main page. So what we are doing is we are going to that shopping component, app component HTML. In the app component HTML, already a lot of logic is present here. So we will clean up all this logic now. That means we don't need all this. We will clean up all this logic because we want to create our own. So let's delete all this. In app component HTML, whatever is there, we are removing it. So that means it is cleaned up. That means it is empty now. It is empty. Okay. Here, what we are doing is we are creating a div and a class as container fluid. Okay. Here we need to create a navigation. So I will create here a heading as a shopping home. And in this div, I will put a class as btn toolbar. Okay, bg some